Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're talking about prepper pantries, tips, and the mistakes you should be avoiding. I've been prepping myself for a good couple of years, and there's been a few mistakes I've made along the way, which I'm hoping to share with you that you don't have to make the same mistakes as I did. So I'm just going to go through the list and quickly cover the things that you might consider. If you're new to prepping, guys, hopefully you find this at all of interest. If you've already been prepping for ages, you never know, there might be a tip or two that you find interesting. So without further ado, let's go to number one. And the basic tip for me, guys, is start very basic. The prepping world, it's complicated and you're constantly bombarded, like I say, with many things. And as a new prepper, you might feel, oh my God, it's literally so overwhelming. So the tip number one, guys, start basic. And we talk by basic, we're talking about, guys, pasta, rice, beans, tins of fruits, vegetables, and protein, be it a tinned fish or meat. This is the best start. That'll give you plenty of nutrients, plenty of protein, and plenty of carbs. So this is the way to start. Number two, guys, is build it gradually. To have the whole prepper's pantry stocked up, it could cost an absolute fortune. Of course, also depending on whether you're preparing it for 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or even longer. So you can imagine they will cost you quite a bit of money. So do it gradually, and please don't stress about or thinking, oh my God, you have to have this all now. I had exactly the same feeling at some points when I got a little bit overwhelmed, and the things, you read in the news and I felt the absolute need to have it all and to have it all now. However, it all, guys, depends on your financial situation, and probably like many of us, we don't have a million sitting in a bank account to be able just to buy everything you want now and then. So the whole idea is to do this gradually, and once you start prepping and adding on things to your pantry gradual, at the same time you can adjust these things that you stock into depending on what your family likes. And of course you can judge the situation, what's happening in the world, and you can adjust your amounts and the items that you prep at the same time. Number three, guys, a very important one as well. It is rotate your stock. It is so easily done, guys, that you just put your tins in there and you kind of just forget about them and you've no idea where things are and what the dates are. Yes, of course, there's dates on the tins, but unless you put them in some sort of an order, the chances are you'll be consuming things that still have a longer date and you'll be wasting, or things will be going out of date if you don't get to them on time. So one of the key things, guys, is first in, first out. So for example, if you buy a tin of beans every week, every time you buy a fresh one, you put this to the back of a cupboard or whatever you're storing them in, and you take the one from the front, because that will have a shorter expiration date. Of course, I understand that tins don't have like a weekly expiration date, but you get my idea, guys. If you buy this on a monthly basis, that'll be quite a lot applicable. So always take the one from the front and always put the one at the back. Don't do the same mistake I did. I have this rotary process, okay? I do that. However, because like in many probably cases we stock items in a different area, if you somehow barricade the area, you can't get to it, or you kind of totally forget where it is, it's very likely that you'll forget some items. They'll be kind of sitting there and they'll have a shorter expiration date than the one that are accessible. It's a long time of also understanding that you have to take the one with the shortest expiration date. Actually make sure you're able and you know where your other things are, and you make sure that you can access them as well. So number four comes from that as well, guys, is to make sure you put your dates on the tins. As you know, of course, every tin and every product already have a date, but it's somewhat in the awkward places, and quite often in the tins it is actually on underside. So if you have your tins standing in a cupboard, you are not understanding or not knowing what date is on the tin. So every time I do my prepper shop, guys, I'll put the date in this Sharpie on the front of the tin. So when the tins are lined up in my cupboard, I get to see exactly the dates of the tins. At the same time, it's also important to label everything else. Of course, especially if you're storing stuff for a longer term. Although it would not potentially affect your rotation system, especially if you're buying sort of like rice and beans and they're kind of sitting there for a longer period of time. However, yet again, guys, if you're buying things on a monthly basis and you're intending to store this for a very long time, the date that you package the rice or beans or repackaged anything else, just put the date on there. I think it will help you in the long run as well. Number five, it's kind of a straightforward one, but could easily be forgotten. Consider the dietary needs of the family. For example, I myself do shopping for a family and I don't have any specific dietary needs. However, if my husband or my daughter needed something specific, that it's very important not to forget to be able to cater for those kind of needs. So whether you guys, people have a diabetics or any other issues in the family, guys, to make sure that you cater for those needs as well, and just don't forget it. I know it sounds like a really straightforward, easy thing, but sometimes, especially if you're going to do your prepping shop and you're sort of a little bit in unplanned manner, that could really easily be forgotten. Next one is, guys, again, is diversify your food choices. I always tell you, if you follow the channel, you know that I always suggest you have the item. For example, we're talking about, let's say, a tin of tomatoes. Make sure you diversify and have those tomatoes in multiple ways. And I'm talking about having tin tomatoes. Let's have some sun-dried tomatoes. Let's have some tomato paste. Let's have some tomato powder. So this gives you a little bit of diversity in your pantry. So if you come to a stuck-up situation where you have to do something, cook something, it's really, really nice. And I tell you guys, it will be super, super important to be able to have these options in your pantry. For example, if you cannot or haven't stocked enough of the tin tomatoes or tin passata, you know you can make your tin passata with, not tin passata, but you can make a passata with a powdered tomatoes and many things like this, guys. Just think about it outside the box. Go through some of my videos. There's plenty of ideas out there, but literally think outside the box and diversify your pantry all the time. Next one, guys, is super important, as I already touched on this earlier, is keep track of your inventory, if you call it inventory, or your prepping pantry. It's super easy just to shove the stuff in a cupboard, okay, and then you just be none the wiser of what you have. Yes, you can open it to have a look, but generally it's such a nice idea to be able to have this on a paper so you kind of know what you have. Of course, you have to keep maintaining that. There are many, many softwares out there that people selling in terms of that you can monitor your prepper pantry. I'm not intending to pay a subscription or certainly tell anybody how much of the stuff I have, because it's kind of all kept in a cloud. This is not my kind of thing, but there are options out there. You can easily create yourself Excel sheet, exactly if that's what you want to do. It's super easy if you know how to do it, and it's easy because you can then maintain and change it as you go. I am super lazy when it comes to that. I just do not feel like I have a time to spend then doing this. So my prepping thing is totally basic. Okay, I have a book, well, I have a notebook. Okay, I have my locations and I have stuff written there, how much I have, what I have, and the dates. And this is easy enough for me. It is a little bit messy somewhat if you accessing and taking stuff in and out. However, as you know, I always say I have the short-term, medium-term and the long-term storage. So technically I only have to correct my imminent storage because the long-term storage products are not getting touched. But the key is find what works for you, but do make sure that you keep the track. If you follow, again, I had this issue before with the cat food. I was adamant I had a lot of cat food. I had 2 cats and I stocked up on the cat food on Amazon Prime ages ago. And I bought a lot, and I mean like a lot of cat food. And little do you know, when I had a tiny bit issue, I was tidying up one of my cupboards and I realized they literally only had 1 box of cat food. And for 2 of them, they're literally only enough to go like a month. So that was a little bit panic station. So if I've written that down and not forgotten that, then I wouldn't be in that position. So super, super important. Next thing, guys, is invest in the long-term storage. What I mean by this, if you are intending to keep things any longer than a year or so, invest into things, invest into the storage containers. Also things like the Mylar bags or vacuum sealer, glass containers, vacuum containers, anything that's suitable for your needs of what you feel like you want to keep the products in, but make sure that you do. Nothing's worse than, guys, spending all that money on your cheap rice and cheap pasta and then finding out later down the line you have like bug infestation. Yes, of course, you can do many other things to protect that. Again, have a look through some videos. We're talking about storing different things, but it's super, super important, and do not skip that step. And one of the things, again, I find is very important, which I mentioned to you and I mentioned to you before, is tins. Every time you go shopping, guys, if it's a little bit drizzly or wet outside, before you put your tins into the storage, make sure you wipe them. It's super, super important. And I found this out from my own mistake, is I've put some tins into the garage after I took them from the shop and I didn't wipe them. I was in a hurry, and coming to check the tins a couple of months down the line, that started to go rusty. And we all know that rust, not particularly a good friend for your long-term storage, especially when it comes to tins. So one of the key points for you, if you take something away from that, is wipe your tins before you put them into the storage. Next thing, guys, and I cover this many, many times, apart from storing the basic things and the needs that we have and the family has, don't forget to store the comfort food, treats, sweets, things like this. In a tough situation, guys, nothing better could be is to get something that you really like, whether it's been a chocolate or biscuits, those kind of things that store really, really well, especially chocolate. And there's many ways you can store biscuits and other things. It depends really what you like, but just don't forget having a little bit of stockpile of anything that you really or your family likes. It's really, really important, especially if things get a little bit tougher. Next one on the list, guys, is keeping things tidy. Keep your pantry or your areas tidy. If I had one big massive pantry, that would have been so much easier. However, we live in UK, we don't have pantries. I have things all over the place, and it's super, super important to keep it tidy. Again, if you've been following me, I found one of my condiments cupboards that's kind of got very unruly. And although I do my stock check and I check my pantry for pests and for anything else, and there's something you should be doing, which we'll cover that later anyway, but I basically found out the kind of cupboard got stocked with some other things that are not meant to be there, because purely, again, I didn't have the time to label stuff, to date the stuff, so it's kind of just got shoved with the other things there. And then by the time I come to look at it, I found a couple of bits in the bag that unfortunately I didn't see. They were kind of running out of date. So the importance is, guys, is not to shove stuff that's inappropriate in a place where you stock your food and you need an access to that. Again, I know it sounds very basic, but I think we all find that we'll probably have a cupboard or spaces that, especially if you're in a hurry or you're lacking a bit of space, you just shove stuff somewhere just for the moment, and then you forget about it and things happen. So super, super important. Keep your pantry organized, so at any point you can have a look at it and make sure you can see exactly what you have and where you have it. Another thing, very important thing, guys, don't focus on tins and preserved food that you buy from shops alone. Learn how to dehydrate and how to preserve your own food. It's super, super important, I think, guys. The way the things are going, as you know, it's very important to be able to, especially if you grow your own produce, to be able to preserve your own produce. Tins are great, guys, right? And I always buy tin meat. Of course, yes, I have a pressure canner, but still, it's still cheaper for me to pressure can vegetables, especially when I grow my own. But with the meat, I still buy the meat from the tins because I don't have to worry about preserving meat that way. However, just by learning the things like pressure canning or dehydrating, you just opening your world to probably a cheaper option than buying certain things in the supermarket. So have a look. Again, I've done many videos covering the food preservation techniques, things like pickles as well. So have a look and hopefully find some interest, but it's super, super important. Next one, guys, okay, is don't confuse prepping with hoarding. I know many people sort of have a go at the prepper say, because prepping is basically hoarding. It is totally different thing. Hoarding is basically if I suddenly decided to buy myself, I don't know, 1 million of pumpkins and stuck them in my cupboard because I think one day there might be no food available. But in fact is, I don't like pumpkins. I don't know what to do with them, and I have no ability to cook them. So just stocking them for the point of stocking them, this is called hoarding. When we're talking about preparedness, guys, is having exact items that you and your family eat only, and knowing what to cook with them, how to cook them, and having the ability to cook it. So for example, never buy things that you have no interest in eating, because it's just no point. I know in a desperate situation you might say that if there's nothing else to eat, then of course your family will eat that, but find an alternative. There is always an alternative for something that my family don't like. So find the alternative and only stock the things they will eat, and then the quantity you know you need. Hence where the planning come into play. Make sure you plan what you need, know how much of that you will eat, plan it out, and then say if you're buying things stock for, like, say 2 to 5 years, know how much you need and then buy that amount over the time. Next one, again, I kind of semi-covered this one, but do not forget your pets. And we're not just talking about the pet food, also talking about things like the pet medicine and pet bedding. As I've mentioned, I have 2 cats, and during the COVID, guys, we were prepared for many things to have things stocked. We haven't had the issue with the food, and they had food. However, I overlooked the pet litter. I buy the pet litter from Lidl, which is far the best and far the cheapest at the moment, and has been like this for years. And they only literally had like 4 bags. And because there's 2 of them and they don't go out, I go through about 1 bag a week minimum. So unfortunately, I have overlooked that issue. And during the COVID time, like many things sold out. Lidl didn't have any. So I've started resorting buying the litter from Amazon and different places. And even though things were selling out fast. So rather me spending at the time I think it was £1.09 for a bag of cat litter from Lidl, which I should have had plenty of stock of, and I paying about £10 or £11 per bag. So at some point I was spending 150 quid a month on the pet litter because I couldn't find anything else. And people also the same looked at one of those things you use for the spillages, and even sand, all of that went out of stock because people were desperate. And I know you say, well, just kick your cats out outside. Unfortunately, it's not possible because we have many stories here when we moved here that people were poisoning cats, and we have a lot of streams, a lot of rivers, a lot of hills. So it's a no-no, absolutely. So that was the reason. So up most I could possible, I would not let my cats out unless an absolute desperation. But the point is, guys, I was not ready for that, and I paid a heavy price. So another one, second to last, is, guys, is inspect your pantry. So make sure you have your plan when you inspect the pantry. I suggest minimum once every 6 months, even better if you can do this once every 3 months. Again, things happen, guys. However well you stock your items, there's a possibility that some pests will get into that. And I have a perfect example of where I bought some flour on sale from Booker's, and I bought a lot of bags. It was a multi-pack of them, and I just put it in my understairs cupboard without anything else. I didn't think anything to it, and I kind of forgot about it. And over the time I've been adding things to it, and little do you know, when I wanted to take it out because I forgot it was there, and then I found it, and I had a total infestation of the dust mites, not dust mites, the flower mites. They literally infested every single flower. They were absolutely everywhere, so that was not a pretty sight. So if I caught that on time, then I wouldn't be having such a big problem at the time. So I learned my lesson at the same time. That's why I also do not stock things that are susceptible to infestations. Even if you pre-treat them, even if they're in Milo bags, I never keep all of them in the same place. I always spread them out in as many different places as possible, just in case. And the last thing, guys, but not least, is do not panic and do not get overwhelmed if your pantry is not full as you like it to. Like I said earlier, I've gone through an episode where so much was happening in the news and on the TV that I've just got totally overwhelmed and totally panicked, and I felt that whatever I did wasn't good enough. I didn't feel that was at this stage, like I didn't feel comfortable as a prepper that I was at the place where if something gone wrong, I didn't feel like I never had enough. But this is a place I should never have been, because as genuinely as I said, I've been prepping for a little while, and I know how much food I have. I know how long we can go without going to the supermarkets or needed to venture out altogether. So it's very important to know where you are, guys, but no stage panic, because panic puts you in a really wrong frame of mind, especially when we're talking about preparedness. Preparedness, we need a clear mind. We need a plan. We need to know what we're doing, and panicking and worrying is not going to get us there. So just stay calm, you knowing you're doing the best you can, and make sure you do the best you can, and this is the best that you can do. So there we are, guys. So hopefully I haven't talked too much. I've covered about 15 items for the prepping mistakes and prepping things. So I do hope at least some of you have found some of this helpful. If you have, don't forget thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a look through loads of prepping videos, guys, I have about food preservation, food storage, many things that are on the channel under the playlist. And subscribe if you haven't, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye bye.